It's unfortunately that time of the year for massive waves of releases, so we'll see who's affected. We'll also see what's new for Pat, the Smackdown women's division, and more. Starting things off with the recent 2026 batch of releases. Post-WrestleMania season is always a hard time for both talent and fans, because it's usually the time of the year where the company does a spring cleaning of the locker room and gets rid of many on-screen talents due to budget cut reasons. This year's batch of releases included a lot of developmental names, but also a lot of big main roster names that were just on television earlier this week. The most surprising releases being the entire Wyatt Six faction, Aleister Black, Zelina Vega, Kairi Sane, and Alba Fire. There were several other names, but those few right there were the most significant and most shocking overall. For the Wyatt Six, there is no survivor from that group. The entire faction was wiped out and released from the company. And their release also makes sense as to why MFT just beat them cleanly during their grand finale match. Wyatt Six lost like nothing because they already knew they were cutting them just a few days later. The Wyatt Six was always one of those things that was great in theory and concept, but the execution was never there for this group at all during their entire run. The most special thing they did was their debut moment, but outside of that, it never really seemed like the creative team really cared about them, and they spent most of their run being in pointless feuds that never really had a deeper story or purpose. Fans feel like that group could have been so much more with the proper writing and direction, but since they never really had any direction and was constantly lost, it looks like that's why they were on the chopping block. It hurts the most, especially for the Wyatt fans, because that was our last real piece of still feeling Bray Wyatt's influence on the show, and that's now unfortunately gone. There's still Alexa Bliss though, so the Bray Wyatt legacy will have to live through her fully since everyone else is now gone. Maybe even more surprising than the Wyatt Six was the release of Aleister Black and Zelina Vega. Although they never really had a sense of true direction, this couple was constantly on television in recent months and recent weeks, and always had a role to play. From backstage interviews to matches, you just always saw Aleister and Zelina on television, and Zelina just turned heel as well and just aligned with Aleister Black. So a lot of fans were curious and interested in seeing how they flesh out that pairing on television. Even literally right before WrestleMania 42, they showed Aleister Black and Zelina creeping around the situation with Randy and Cody and keeping an eye on them. And when they showed these moments of Aleister Black and Zelina spying on Randy and Cody, the first question we asked was if a legitimate storyline was in place and coming up here, or was this a worthless teaser that didn't mean anything and was just meant to get fans buzzing about nothing? And now that Aleister Black and Zelina were released, that confirms that those teasers of them spying on Randy and Cody meant absolutely nothing after all, just like how most fans expected. Kairi Sane is another release that was the most surprising because she's been a constant part of television ever since she first returned. And even in recent weeks, she had this whole long storyline going about how Asuka was very controlling and abusive to her, making it seem like they were building up the story of Kairi breaking free from Asuka and standing up to her, but that story is now left incomplete due to Kairi's release. Alba Fire is also gone, which puts an end to Chelsea Green's Secret Service parody act. So Chelsea will be forced to adjust and pivot with Alba Fire now being gone. So it's always a hard time for fans and talent to get through with these releases. Every year there's names on the list that you just can't believe actually got released, and 2026 is no different. A lot of names on that list that's hard to believe are actually gone from the company. Zelina Vega also revealed that the call for her release came directly from TKO. She noted that usually you get a call from Stamford, Connecticut, but that was not the case this time around for this batch of releases. But hopefully we get to see all these amazing talents in other places continuing their dreams in the next 90 days. There's finally some more word coming out on what happened with the abrupt end to the Randy and Pat partnership, and what exactly went down there to make everything feel so sudden and anticlimactic. Even before WrestleMania took place, there was already word making waves that a Backlash tag team match between Randy and Pat versus Cody and Jelly Roll was being prepped. And just like the rest of Pat and Jelly Roll's involvement, fans were not so thrilled about those Backlash plans either. Reports are now claiming that the plan was for Randy to allegedly win the undisputed title from Cody at WrestleMania and have that moment continue Randy and Pat's partnership into that Backlash celebrity-filled tag team match. But what put a stop to those plans and changed everything was reportedly Pat himself. Reports claim that Pat requested for the story to end earlier than it was supposed to because he wasn't a fan of all the actual negativity and bad fan reactions that was surrounding the storyline. Pat's involvement into this storyline had the entire wrestling fandom united in the belief that this didn't make any logical sense and was just horrible all around. So it's being reported that Pat pulled out of the storyline for that reason right there. And it's because of Pat walking away from the storyline earlier than expected that several other connected plans had to be altered as well. Since Pat was no longer sticking around after WrestleMania and into Backlash, this means that Randy winning the title no longer made sense. So they canceled Randy's 15th world title win and instead had Cody Rhodes retain his title at WrestleMania 42. And with Pat leaving, this also left them no other choice but to cancel that big tag team match that they had planned for Backlash. Pat knew things were getting bad and reportedly pulled himself out of it to return things to normal. And because of that reported request from Pat, the storyline is back to being Randy and Cody with no outside interference, and fans certainly hope it stays like that going forward. The SmackDown women's division needed a big refresher, and that's thankfully what the SmackDown after WrestleMania provided. Not only are Paige and Brie Bella now a part of SmackDown full-time, but the SmackDown after WrestleMania saw Jacy Jayne and her entire Fatal Influence faction get called up to SmackDown. There's been lots of talks in recent weeks about Jacy Jayne getting called up, but it was unclear if her faction was getting called up with her or not. The April 24th edition of SmackDown revealed to us that the entire group has been called up. Not only called up, but they were all over their debut episode of SmackDown in very impactful ways. The Fatal Influence arrived on the scene by interrupting the tag team match between Alexa and Charlotte versus Paige and Brie Bella. Instant impact by taking out all four of those massive legendary names in the women's division. And their debut night was not done there at all. After Rhea Ripley issued pretty much an open challenge for anyone in the back to step up and face her, it was Jacy Jayne and Fatal Influence that answered the call. Jacy got amazing heel heat and went back and forth on the mic with Rhea before taking on Rhea in an amazing match as well. The match ended in disqualification after the rest of Fatal Influence stopped Jacy from losing to Rhea, and that's a pretty flawless debut night for Fatal Influence and introduces them to the casual fans in a major way. They took out all four women in the tag team match, had a promo segment with Rhea Ripley, and we saw Jacy versus Rhea, so just a great and complete debut night for Fatal Influence. And after that match ended in disqualification, all of Fatal Influence proceeded to pounce on Rhea Ripley and attack her with no one coming out to help Rhea. But that's when we saw the big teaser of what's to possibly come. Alexa and Charlotte are in the medical room getting treated when Rhea walks into the room as well, and all three women in this room were all victims of Fatal Influence, so they all had that in common. Charlotte says she's going to take care of Jacy Jayne next week, and throws an indirect jab at Rhea Ripley for not being able to get the job done and take care of Jacy. Alexa apologized for how Charlotte barked at Rhea Ripley, saying that's just how Charlotte is. What's interesting here is that it does seem like there's a chance that they're setting up a potential alliance amongst Rhea, Charlotte, and Alexa. Maybe not a full-blown faction, but just a temporary partnership between Rhea and the Allies of Convenience, so that they'll have a chance against Fatal Influence and match up against them perfectly. Rhea can't take them on by herself, and Alexa and Charlotte also can't take them on by themselves either, because they would still be outnumbered. But if Rhea, Charlotte, and Alexa come together as one super team, well, now they'll have a better chance against Fatal Influence. So that could be what they're setting up there, but obviously Rhea and Charlotte have a complicated past, so they would have to fix and address that before being able to fully stand besides one another. But what are your thoughts on today's stories? Leave your comments below. Don't forget to subscribe with all notifications on, and leave a like if you enjoyed. Thanks for watching, guys.